G'day, it's Jamie and welcome to Tantanoola Tigers. Today I'm reading a couple of old newspaper reports about a panther sighting at Burwood, Victoria in 1885. So we'll get into it. This first article was published in the Australasian on Saturday the 13th of June 1885. On Tuesday night, a calf belonging to Mr. Crawler of Wattle Grove Road, Burwood, in the Burundara district, was killed and partly eaten by some foraging animal. There were tracks which did not look like those of a dog, and besides, it was pointed out that even vicious dogs, which are addicted to killing sheep, seldom attack young cattle. The next morning, Mr. Sampson and Mr. Henry Hill, adjoining landowners on the Norwood Road, were talking about the desirability of keeping calves at home until the stranger, which is supposed to be an escapee from a menagerie, was shot or captured. When suddenly it appeared upon some rising ground near a creek which has a good deal of scrub along its banks. It galloped as if a pack of hounds were after it, over a wheat field and into a grass paddock, where an intervening hedge hid it from view and was lost. The tracks were followed up for some distance by Mr. Sampson after he had gone home for his gun and revolver, but the trail was ultimately lost near some timber. The gait of the animal is described as being like that of a bounding of a cat, and unlike the stride of a dog, and that opponents positively aver that it was not a dog. At the same time, they saw no spots or stripes on the animal, which seemed a uniform dun colour. Its size, described by Mr. Hill, as being not larger than a full-grown cattle dog, but Mr. Sampson is sure it was much bigger. On returning home, Mr. Sampson found in his yard near the cowshed a number of tracks similar to that left by the animal. There was a calf in the shed, and the imprint showed that the brute, which had been seen, had not retired without his expected dinner before he repeatedly reconnoitred the building at all points. In the afternoon, Mr. Lowe, a market gardener living about a mile away from Mr. Hill, in the direction in which the unwelcome intruder went, discovered that the beast had passed through his ground, close to the front of his house, and left tracks behind, which were covered up for the inspection of the curious. The cast of some of the footprints has been shown to Professor McCoy, who inclines to the opinion that the disturber is a large dog. The size and the shape of the imprint and great curvature of the claw agree, says Professor McCoy, with those of the panther, but the claws in the panther would be retracted and not impress the ground like those of the copies. It is noticeable too that the description given of the colour of the animal tallies with that of the mastiff, the largest kind of dog, but our informants say that the sky was so foggy that the colour could not be distinctly seen. A long tail, which was very conspicuous, would also answer the description of the mastiff. The episode has excited much interest in the district, and marksmen eager to bring the tiger to bay have been zealously practising preparatorily to hunt on a large scale, which is to take place today. The whole of the scrub within a considerable radius is to be carefully beaten, as there is feeling of insecurity while the wild animal is supposed to be at large. It is considered unsafe for young children to cross the paddocks on their way to school. The end. Okay, so this final article was published in the Sydney Morning Herald on Wednesday the 17th of June 1885, titled The Tiger Scare in Victoria. There seems to be but little doubt of the presence of some wild animal in the neighbourhood of Burwood, Melbourne, and so convinced are the residents of the fact that scarcely any of them will leave their houses after nightfall. Very wild rumours have been in circulation for the last few days, and it is with difficulty that the truth is ascertained. Mr. F. H. Sampson of Hartwell House, Burwood, makes the following statement. On Wednesday last, I had the occasion to deal with a refractory horse in one of my paddocks and was assisted by Mr. Hill, my next door neighbour. We remained talking a while, and Mr. Hill made some remark about our tiger having escaped in the northeast district, and suddenly ejaculated, "There he is!" I caught sight of the animal at the same time. It stood about 2 foot 6 inches in height, and in size was somewhat larger than a young calf. The morning was dull, and I could not see either stripes or spots, but the colour was earthy brown. It had a peculiar movement, making its way over the ground similarly to a large cat, bounding several feet at a time. I returned to my house and, having procured a rifle and revolver, gave chase, but after a run of about 200 yards, the animal entered a furze eye paddock where I lost sight of it, but followed the tracks for some distance. Mr. Sampson was convinced it was not a dog of any species, and this view was borne out by examination of footprints. Mr. Hill corroborated Mr. Sampson's statement, but the inclination of the opinion that the animal was an unusually large cattle dog. At the rear of Mr. Sampson's grounds there is a winding creek, fringed with rich fern grove, and on examination fresh tracks were discovered on Thursday. These led to a yard in which there was a calf, and in the soft ground there were prints so well marked that Mr. Sampson took casts of them. Several residents of the district, recognising the fact that the intruder was somewhat dangerous, gathered in parties and with revolvers and rifles scoured the surrounding country, but beyond finding new tracks they met with no success. On Friday morning, a Mr. Lowe who has a small farm on the creek referred to, found a number of strange marks in some sandy soil around his house. They were very distinctly impressed and consist of 7 marks visible. The cushion on the foot, a large pad-shaped impression, 4 toe prints, all with claws, and 2 further claw marks on either side between the cushion and the toes. They were traceable around a pen in which a cow was being fastened and led off to the creek, being marked at long intervals as if the animal had bounded rapidly away. On Saturday, 2 parties of 8 persons each made a fresh search and found further traces of the criminal, several of them in the paddocks. About 8 miles distant from Burwood, there is a farmer who has lost 6 sheep in a mysterious manner, having found their carcass in more or less mangled condition in his paddocks, and between that and the Upper Yarra, several farmers and selectors have had some of their stock killed in the same way. The residents of Burwood positively assert that the object of their anxiety is not a dingo or a dog as suggested, and nearly all entertain the idea that a tiger or dangerous feline animal is somewhere in the proximity. They urge that the Aboriginal trackers should be sent out, as by this means they think the animal can be easily secured there. Well, this is really interesting, this. I reckon it's a Thylacine or a Thylacoleo. They saying it stood 2 feet 6 inches in height, and it was somewhat larger than a young calf. They couldn't see any stripes or spots, but the colour was an earthy brown. It had a peculiar movement, and it bounded several feet at a time like a cat. And then the tracks are really interesting that they found. They consisted of 7 marks visible, a cushion on the foot, a large pad-shaped impression with 4 toe prints, all with claws. Now, big cats don't have their claws out at all when they are moving. It's only cheetahs that do. But they found further 2 claw marks on either side of the cushion and the toes. So that's 5 toes technically. So that to me screams Thylacine or Thylacoleo. It could have been a panther, who knows? But the 5 claw prints really interest me. That's really interesting. Okay, that's it from me. I'll get back to you all next time. Bye.